Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lead right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, so in this video, Alvin and I will be giving you our bipartisan takes on the New York City mayoral Democratic primary election.
Yeah, and just as we were recording the intro, literally the prediction market has flipped already to Zohran Mamdani, and we're going to be delving into the main two candidates, the only two candidates that can potentially win this Democrat nomination, and then we'll be pivoting briefly to discuss the general election because it is also a little interesting. But generally, as a brief overview of New York City, they generally, for the past 20 years, have elected Democrat after Democrat, of course, being a very liberal city. And so whoever wins the Democrat nomination generally cruises in November without a fight. But it might be different this time. So we're going to talk about it. Now, since our last video, a lot has changed. Since our last video, it looked like Andrew Cuomo had a chokehold on the nomination at that point. But recently, and especially today, as we were recording this video, Zohran Mamdani, the more far left candidate, has come in and taken over. So we're going to be discussing this. Why don't we each introduce a candidate and then we'll talk about the race?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the most relevant candidate, and then we'll kind of move from there, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, so we have the former governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Now back in the good old days, pre-COVID era, Andrew Cuomo was like a dominating force in New York politics. During the COVID era in particular, like his name like rose to prominence nationwide. Like I was walking around my home state of New Jersey, seeing primary signs advocating for Cuomo to replace Biden as the Democratic nominee in 2020. So that was the peak of his star before he tumbled into the abyss with several sexual harassment allegations against him that are incredibly credible. Um, also, and that paired with various scandals on his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, in particular, him misleading the numbers on how many people died in nursing homes in the state of New York. So, generally not a good look. And he's running to come back into the political spotlight here in this election. After he resigned in disgrace back in what was it, 21 or 22? I believe it was 21. So this is his attempt to come back into politics here, the New York City, with a New York City mayoral campaign. He's running a more moderate, tough on crime sort of campaign, something that like we really saw from like Eric Adams back when he ran in 2021. But yeah, that's basically the Cuomo campaign.
Yeah, exactly. One of the worst governors we've ever seen from the state of New York and potentially around the country with how he handled COVID. And of course, very, very credible allegations of sexual assault and numerous of and many of those allegations as well. So really brutal guy. I really could not, see a worse primary field from a Republican perspective, seeing as it is either him or the borderline communist, the very much socialist Zohran Mamdani here, who, yes, he's only a state assembly member for the past 4 years, but he has definitely come into extreme relevance here, being
Yes.
the sort of, only other candidate that can challenge Cuomo. He has built himself as the main opposition with no one else even being close. I don't even know if it's worth it talking about anyone else. Maybe we can for a few brief seconds, but really it's going to be Zohran versus Andrew. And of course, Zohran Mamdani is running in the much further left lane. He has many more extreme, novel ideas, right? We can agree on that.
Yeah.
They're completely new, and some of them have never been tried. A lot of them would be affiliated with the socialist wing of the Democrat Party, as well as him, of course, receiving endorsements from that wing of the party in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo, as we laid out earlier, he has been getting endorsements from that establishment wing, such as Bill Clinton, former president of the United
Yep.
States, or Michael Bloomberg, former mayor, who built a lot of name recognition through a presidential campaign back in 2020. So really, we are seeing a battle of two wings of the Democrat Party, and
Yes.
this race could sort of see who wins out because we saw across New Jersey, for example, just a couple weeks ago, we saw the moderate wing prevail, but this time around, it's a lot closer.
Yeah, and I think that's not like I don't think you could really attribute it to the broader wings, the strength of the broader wings of the party. I'd rather attribute it to just the moderate Dems aligning behind like the worst possible candidate.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
you
True.
know, the fact that like a former governor is getting his ass kicked, for lack of better phrasing, by a no-name Democratic socialist who's in the state, like basically like who was not prominent at all. He was started pulling at 1% and now is risen to second place through a very like and you know I will give credit to Mamdani where credit is due. He has run a very effective campaign. It seems like he's reached a lot of new voters, younger voters. His online campaign, like for like my friends, people my age, like his ads are not really even advertisements, but his campaign promotional videos on like TikTok or Instagram are almost unavoidable. Um, so he's very much proven like he's an effective candidate. But yeah, this is just a real failure by moderate Democrats and by them like backing such a horrible candidate. That's like the real failure here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. If you had to make a candidate in a lab to lose to Zaron, it would be Andrew Cuomo,
Yep.
pretty much, because, under normal circumstances, Zohran Mamdani should be completely denied from this nomination, considering his very extreme ideas. But in this case, when you put up, a sexual assaulter, it generally just doesn't happen. And we'll see it's a complete 50-50 race at this point, as we speak. So why don't we get into sort of the early voting numbers? Because I know you definitely want to highlight this in before we make your prediction.
Yeah. So these um like even though the polling has been pretty solid for Cuomo over the last few days, the early voting numbers are what's giving the Mamdani camp lots of hope because, in particular, young voters are actually turning out, and that's like the core of Mamdani's base. Um, like those younger voters. So as you can see here in early voting numbers here, 25 to 34 is actually leading. Like in a primary, you wouldn't really expect that. In a primary, usually in primaries, usually older voters turned out, not really younger voters. So this is sort of new. I mean, obviously this is only early vote. This isn't like we haven't gotten the full composition of like what the electorate is going to look like yet. But with early vote alone, this looks really good. Another stat from this Gothamist article, like because they've been going through the early vote numbers that I found really interesting, is that around I believe it was 25% of early voters have never voted in it, like or haven't voted in a primary election, a Dem primary election for mayor, or like I think a Democratic primary election in
Right here,
10
right
years.
here. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, you found it.
Right
Since
here. Yes.
2012. That is
Yeah.
a remarkable difference from 2020, the 2021 mayor election when that was 3%. So there's a lot of first-time voters here, a lot of people just turning out for this election, and that is a remarkably good sign for Mamdani. Another good sign in the early voting numbers, if you want to, I think I'm not sure if it's up or down, but there's a map somewhere in there of where people are actually voting. Yes, in those Mamdani does better among white voters. So in those areas of gentrified Brooklyn and Manhattan, those are the areas that are turning out the most also. So all those numbers, taking all those numbers together, the early voting numbers look really good for Mamdani. And yeah, like that's my point there. Like there you go.
Yeah, I mean that's really good news for Mamdani, and backing up Mamdani's rise is this Emerson poll that dropped. Now, just to preface this poll before I really get into it, I think it's important to look at the general sort of polling because really, um, like the polling in general has showed Cuomo up.
Oh, I'm not sure if that
And
page has it, but yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure this page has it, but in general, you saw um, Andrew Cuomo up in the polls, especially in the final round. Now, in
Yes.
New York City, they do ranked choice voting, so the candidate with the least amount of votes gets eliminated every round, and we go until we have a majority winner. And how this works in New York City, really, now that we're down to Mamdani and Cuomo, is that people can rank whoever they want in rounds, 1 through 7, I suppose. But at the end of the day, it's either going to be Mamdani or Cuomo that prevail, as Brad Lander, the third place, doesn't even come close to reaching the other two amounts in round 7.
Yeah.
And so, really, we've been looking at that final round result in every poll. And Cuomo's been consistently ahead until today, when this nonpartisan poll dropped, showing Mamdani up in the final round by 3 to 4%, which is
Mhm.
honestly a brutal poll for Cuomo. And is a big sign of life for Mamdani. Sort of, I guess it confirms the online momentum that we've been seeing because really we thought that was a lot just fake noise online because the polling wasn't reflecting that. But now this is a big one on the final day.
Yeah, I mean, the polling numbers, like at least these polling numbers kind of make sense in the context of the early voting numbers. I believe the Emerson poll also tested like people who've already voted, like voted early, versus people voting on election day. And they found Mamdani holds a 10-point lead among people who voted early. So that adds up in this poll. Also, it shows Mamdani leading with younger voters, which is no surprise. Him leading with Asian voters and white voters. I mean, he's South Asian himself, so that makes sense. Um, the only crosstab that didn't really make sense here, and we've been seeing it as a trend in polls a lot, is that women actually prefer, according to polling at least, seem to prefer Cuomo over Mamdani, and men seem to lean a little more toward Mamdani in this poll. That's very bizarre, considering all the sexual assault allegations against Cuomo. That's like the only really like out of whack crosstab I've seen in the polling. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting poll because again, as you mentioned, this is like the first poll that actually has Mamdani up. He's been getting closer, 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 and now he's up in the final round. So, yeah, like I mean, it definitely brings hope to the Mamdani campaign.
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at these polls, 3 to 4% is big and is definitely going to weigh into both of our predictions. Now, the final thing I think we really need to talk about before we get into the predictions is you see the early voting numbers. They look good for Mamdani, right here
Hmm.
with the age numbers. And the thing with tomorrow is if you don't live in the New York City metro area, is the weather. Now, I don't even think I need to really say much. You can look at the weather report, the times when the polls are open from the early morning all the way until a night. It is basically in the 90-degree range. And
Yeah,
if
not
not
great.
the upper 90-degree range, especially this key time around 5 to 7, which is when people get off of work and generally would go vote. Okay, so this time frame, 4 to 7 p.m. is a big time for older voters, and it's going to be 97, 98 degrees, which is brutal to stand outside in. And the temperature doesn't even say the whole part because I mean the humidity is also brutal if you're outside the New York City metro area, which we both are.
Hmm.
So it's brutal. And that is bad for Cuomo. I think universally we can recognize that because
Hmm.
Mamdani has already gotten a lot of his voters out, and Cuomo, I mean, just looking at the age numbers, and yeah, that's bad. How are you going to turn out people that have already burnt out at work from that day, and then having to go to the polls or seniors? I mean, they might just not go.
Yeah, that's like since Cuomo's relying on a lower ed, more senior sort of base, that's a pretty bad combination for an extremely what's going to be an extremely hot election day. So Mamdani has an advantage in that sense also because he was able to get a lot of his voters turned out already, it seems, from what we could tell in the early voting numbers. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much all the information. I mean, we could take a look at the betting markets. Um, you could see how the momentum is shifted, and that Emerson poll dropping today, bringing it to even.
Yes, in this past day, right. And yeah, I mean, literally the momentum shifted to the other side as we were opening this video up.
Hmm.
You saw it flip in real time. And for the record, we're recording around 8 p.m. Eastern on the Monday before. So really, I mean, this is huge. This is a complete 50-50. It's an absolute coin flip now, according to the betting markets, although we might disagree, right? We might have certain opinions on who's actually ahead. But regardless, I think before we briefly talk about the general election, let's put in our predictions for the primary.
Yep, I think that's fair enough. All right, I guess I'll open here. I even though we're seeing a lot of momentum and good news from Mamdani today, today was no doubt a good day for Mamdani, and you're happy with your position in the Mamdani campaign, and they ran a really good campaign. I just think at the end of the day, I think it's gonna be like I think like there's gonna be enough seniors and minority voters that are gonna come out for Cuomo, like low end voters that are going to end up voting, and I think it'll push him over the top ever so slightly. Like Mamdani's built a good movement. It's just I don't think his appeal can match the generic sort of Dem appeal. I hate using that word for Cuomo. That Cuomo has will have among primary voters. Yeah, like I think Cuomo will win, despite like even though the Hero, I'll put in my margins. I'll just shut up and put in my margins. I think Cuomo will win by 3 points. So I'll in the final round. This is final round of ranked choice voting. I think Cuomo will slightly win it out. I think it'll be close, but yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in New Yorkers to pick good mayoral candidates. I'm sorry.
Well, we're going to definitely disagree on who a good mayoral candidate is, considering
Oh, I
that
mean, yeah,
Mamdani to me is extremely atrocious. Not saying Cuomo isn't. I mean, he is, of
yeah.
course,
I
abysmal as
mean,
well.
he's
But
not
but
perfect.
Mamdani, of course, in my point of view, is going to be the worst candidate. And I will echo your sentiment of New Yorkers not picking a good candidate and actually go for the Mamdani victory here.
Oh, really?
51.5%, 51.5%
Voted for him.
to 48.9% here, a 2.2% victory. It's not going to be enough to, 51.1 over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not going to be enough to move the Bridging the Gap prediction. So the official Bridging the Gap prediction is a Cuomo victory. However,
Okay.
I do think that Mamdani's actually going to win. And I left this part out when we were doing the analysis so I could actually put it in right here as I was giving my analysis and my prediction. But looking at this is the Zohran Mamdani line, okay, and this is the Andrew Cuomo line. And
Hmm.
the I already voted line is sort of looking at me and seeing a 62 to 38 advantage already in the I already voted line, and only a slight advantage in the very likely to vote line on Andrew Cuomo. So you take a look at this, I think this is actually quite damning for Cuomo. You look at the I already voted line, I think that's a lot. That's a huge margin. And even this very likely line, I think a lot of these older voters are actually just going to sit out because the heat wave is going to make a real impact. And I've been going back and forth on this because actually, quite a few weeks ago, when Mamdani was sitting at around 20% in the betting odds, I guess if we go to the 1 month, you'll see it,
Oh,
it's
that's not
sort of around.
mayoral. That just a general.
Oh,
Sorry.
wrong graph. Over here, when he was at around the 20 percent mark, right, sort of right around the AOC endorsement, I was thinking that Mamdani was going to win. Okay, this is when I sort of thought Mamdani was going to win. Then recently, like even as of like yesterday, I thought Cuomo was going to win because um, the recent polling was showing all the
Yeah.
momentum was dying down from after the No Kings. It looked like those protests didn't really generate too much for Mamdani, but now I'm gonna flip the script. It's not really because of the betting odds. It's really more because of this new Emerson poll, and I think that Mamdani has run an extremely good campaign. The progressives, I think, are going to find the socialists, I think, are finally going to notch a victory. Okay, it is exactly
Oh,
50-50
jeez.
now. This is dramatic. This is extremely dramatic. But I'm going to go with a very dramatic prediction, I suppose, of
Yeah,
a
okay.
Mamdani plus 2.2%. I think it could be closer, but I think Mamdani's going to win in the final round. I don't know how long it's going to tabulate for, so we might honestly not know for a while.
Oh
Because
yeah, I feel like it might be a bit,
it looks
honestly.
extremely unlikely that it will close tomorrow, and if it does, Cuomo will be our next mayor. But otherwise, yes, I'm going to go with the Mamdani victory, and we're going to come back to this in a couple of weeks or so, whenever it comes out of the result, and see how it
Hmm.
is. And maybe we'll just quickly turn now, I guess, to the general election, right?
Yeah, the general election is definitely going to be interesting here because you have the incumbent mayor who's extremely unpopular and is with his 15% approval rating, Eric Adams, running for re-election as an independent. You have the perennial candidate Republican Curtis Silva, who ran back in 2021. And then you have, whichever Democrat here is going to win the primary, either Cuomo or Mamdani. And even after that, there are some questions, particularly on the Cuomo side, of even if they lose the Democratic primary, do they run as a fourth party? So there's a chance that Zohran Mamdani wins the primary and Cuomo still runs in the general as the third party candidate. So this will be interesting. Honestly, I personally believe that whichever Democrat here wins the Dem nomination, whether Mamdani or Cuomo, is going to be heavily favored in a general. Three-way or four-way, I think no matter who, they're probably going to win. That's my take.
Okay, I mean, I disagree. I think if Cuomo wins the primary, he's going to be the next mayor. Sorry, but if Mamdani wins, I see a sort of a 10% chance that Eric Adams actually pulls it out from the grave. And I was actually, I mean, as you know, I was floating this to you, for the past few days. I didn't think it had much backing, but I guess the betting markets do sort of agree with me here.
A little.
You see that, of course, it's 50-50 here on the primary, but you see that Cuomo is at the same percent as he is in the primary, meaning if he wins the primary, he wins the general.
Yep.
However, Mamdani is around 10% less, saying basically if Mamdani wins, I guess 1 out of 5 times, or 20% of that, Eric Adams wins. Or I guess also 2% of that's going to Silva, which is extremely more unlikely, but would be the biggest miracle ever. So really, Eric Adams, I think, has around a 10% chance. I don't think it's
I
20%
I
like
just
this
don't see the
implies, but
shot.
I see it, man. I mean, look, I think this has been an extremely brutal primary. Both candidates are saying like the other person is crazy or the worst person ever. And I think Eric Adams is still a former Democrat. So regardless, I mean, of course, he had a bribery scandal, but
Yeah,
if
but
New Yorkers are
he's
able to overlook the sexual assault scandal, look, they
I
might
know, but Cuomo
overlook
has like
that
a
one.
50-50 approval among Democrats. And so it's like slightly negative in the city overall. Eric Adams, okay, 15% approval rating is like just insanely low. And like he's gonna be relying on probably like low ed, probably African American voters too. That's more of his base, like Brooklyn. But I just think, yeah, I just don't see him being able to pull it out, being that unpopular. Even if Cuomo runs, they're gonna end up splitting each other's vote, and I think Mamdani would just win it.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, if Eric Adams and Cuomo can manage to coordinate, potentially even maybe a Silva dropout. I don't know. Maybe this is thinking too much further into it, but I think if you coalesce around one candidate on the quote unquote right or quote unquote moderate centrist lane. I mean, of course, these people are not really centrist, but you know what I'm saying. Against Mamdani, I think it's possible. It's still rough. We'll have to see. Of course, there's issues going on nationally as well with the Iran
Hmm.
war, which I thankfully it has a ceasefire just as an hour ago.
Yep.
But really, with everything going on, we'll have to see the dynamics as it gets into the general election. Of course, that is very far away. We are focused on the primary election. The predictions are in, and we probably won't know the result. So here it is for all to
Yep.
see. The official line of bridging the gap is a Cuomo plus point 0.4 victory. And yeah, that's about it from me.
Yep.
So.
I think that's it.
All right. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment down below any future suggestions for videos and subscribe to the channel because we will, of course, be reviewing the results shortly after the race. And then when the ranked choice voting comes out, we'll be discussing our prediction as well. So definitely subscribe for that. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
See you guys.